Now, following the launch of the Feminist Reparation Campaign by the Women on Farms project on the 22nd of September 2021, today 150 farm women from the Western Cape and the Northern Cape engaged on land rights and land with the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, the Drakenstein Municipality and Legal Resources Centre. And to give us an update on these engagements, we're now joined by Carmen Louw, the Land and Housing Programme Director for Women on Farms project. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Good to have you on the programme again.
Good evening, and thank you for having us.
All right, so what happened today? What were you trying to do?
Well, as you stated, following the launch of our Feminist Reparation Campaign, we gathered together because the issue of wealth inequality is directly linked to land inequality. And as you know, that 81% of freehold agricultural land still belongs to white men, of which Johan Rupert owns farms in the Cape Winelands alone. And farm women often are landless and evicted from farms. And it's for this reason that they gathered to discuss and engage with the department and municipality as well as Legal Resource Centre. And what they're asking for is for redistribution of agricultural land. And the land that should be specifically targeted is land where farmers own multiple farms, like Johan Rupert, and also where there's unused commercial farmland and where there's state land leased to commercial farmers, of which Stellenbosch Municipality is one of the big sort of culprits who signed 99-year leases just before the first democratic elections.
I would imagine the landowners perhaps are not participating so much in these conversations, but what have the authorities been saying and what position have they taken to date? Well,
first, what Legal Resources Centre is saying is that there's no legislation for a redistribution. There's the legislation in place for tenure security, and that the last legislation was promulgated in 25 years ago, and it doesn't offer enough protection, and that's why we see the thousands and thousands of evictions. And the Drakenstein Municipality admitted that they are the municipality with the highest rates of evictions in the Western Cape, if not the whole country. In 2018, around 22 people faced evictions in that municipality alone. The Department of Rural Development, the official was there, they've developed wonderful new plans for the tenure systems. But the challenge is that there is not sufficient and not a proper budget to implement many of those plans. And from the budgets that we hear annually, the Department of Rural Development gets about 1% of the national budget. So it shows that government is not serious to really address the land question in this country. We've also sent multiple requests to Minister Toko Didiza to engage with farm women to address the issue of landlessness, evictions, and lack of women's access to land. Research presented by the LRC also indicated that for the past 25 years, only about 17% of the land reform beneficiaries are women.
Tell us who has been evicted and why. Have they occupied land? Have they been on this land for a long time? And then the landowners wake up one day and decide that it's time for them to leave. Tell us about that process. What's been happening?
Well, in the Western Cape, most of the evictions are from commercial farmland. So the legislation, as it is, only sort of allows for farm dwellers to live on the land if there's a work relationship. So as soon as that work relationship is terminated, the law allows for landowners to apply for eviction orders. The challenge is that many of women farm dwellers don't have permanent employment on farms, and many of the housing contracts are in the name of male partners. So today, many widows spoke out who were forced to leave farms in very terrible conditions because their husbands died and the farmer no longer allowed them to live on the farm. Some of them ended up on the street without any alternative accommodation. Others live in informal housing, in very poorly constructed informal settlements. And that is one of the reasons why the Drakenstein Municipality was there also, and they admit that they don't have sufficient resources to provide proper alternative accommodation. Just to add that Women on Farms is an amicus in a matter, matter against the Drakenstein Municipality around the issue of alternative emergency housing. We're still waiting the outcome of that was report last year and at the beginning of this year.
So I guess the crux of the matter really is legislation needs to change so that the courts can be empowered and that these things can change to help these women.
Yes, today with Legal Resources Centre's attorneys that was part of the discussion, the dialogue, suggested that we must look at a joint court application to force government to deal with the question of land redistribution from a feminist perspective, and that is in line with our Feminist Reparations Campaign, and we'll have further discussions with Farm Women and Legal Resource Centre and partner organizations who share similar sentiments.
Have you had any conversations with the farm owners themselves directly?
Well, we've tried in the past. We were part of multi-stakeholder engagements, and the perspective of farmers is that they want to secure profits and they want to see how they can do apply minimum legislative processes, but they're not prepared to discuss a real agrarian transformation and real redistribution of land. So we've withdrawn from some of those platforms, and because there's no meaningful change that happens from that.
So what happens now? I mean, you've essentially been told by people who understand the law, our hands are tied, the municipality seems powerless. What do you do now as a grouping?
Well, the farm women in the room, they committed to use their collective power to challenge government and to continue to challenge farmers, and they've started to occupy unused municipal land. We started planting food and they share that food to communities, especially farm worker communities who don't have sufficient income during off seasons. And also last year with COVID, the food produced by these small gardens, food gardens, sustained multiple families who were out of work.
Carmen Louw, thank you so much indeed for joining us, and we wish you the best with this endeavour, and let's hope that legislation changes and urgency is shown by those that are in power, and that these women can get some kind of reparation and some land.
Thank you very much.